So on Sunday morning, as part of our worship service, we sang a song that's been around for a while. It's called Days of Elijah. And in the chorus, it said, "Behold, he comes riding on a cloud, shining like the sun. At the trumpet call, lift your voice. It's the year of Jubilee." Now, to find out what the year of Jubilee is, we've got to go way back into the Old Testament, because the Jubilee was this idea that God gave the Israelites. And we just want to dig into that a little bit more because it kind of ties in also with what we're going to be looking at, Lord willing, on this Sunday on December the 13th. So way back in Leviticus 25, and if you don't know a whole lot about the Bible, Leviticus is basically, the name comes from the clan of the Levites, who were the tribe they were the priests. So they were the preachers of the day. They were the ones who carried out the ministerial duties of the day. So Leviticus, it doesn't mean it's just for the Levites, but it means like these are the rules that the priests went by. These were the regulations that God gave them to give to the people. And one of those was this idea of Jubilee. Every 7 years, the land was to get rest. Now, we know that this idea still carries on in the fact that farmers don't always plant the same crops in the same area every time, because if you do, what I've learned just this week is you leach certain minerals from the soil, and then if you try to plant the same plant again, it won't grow as well, or it might not grow at all. So you have to do a crop rotation. And what God told the Israelites way back in Leviticus was that the land needs a rest every 7 years. So you work the land for 6 years, and on the 7th year, you don't plant, you don't harvest, you don't do anything, but you get to live off of what comes up on its own. Like it's not just going to be barren. God's just not leaving you hanging out to dry. And He even promises them, if you look it up in Leviticus 25, that you'll be able to live off of year 6's harvest for 3 years. He says even in the 9th year, you're going to be able to live off of that last harvest. So it wasn't like God was taking away things for them to do. He just understood that the land needed rest too. It also gave the people rest. Rest is a extremely big deal to God, because He knows that we cannot just keep going and going and going. We are not the Energizer Bunny. And even every now and then, I'm sure the Energizer Bunny has to stop. But the year of Jubilee comes from this idea that every 7 years, that there was this year of Jubilee. And what Jubilee meant was that liberty was proclaimed to all the Israelites who were in bondage to their countrymen. The law provided that the price of servants, was to vary according to the proximity of the next Jubilee year. So what does that mean? Did they just conscript people? Did they just take them away? No. In this case, it means that if you got yourself into financial troubles, you could basically make yourself an indentured servant to your fellow Israelite. And in doing so, however many years it is between now and Jubilee, if it's way before Jubilee, the price is higher. If it's not too far until the next Jubilee year, then the price is less. So essentially, it's not all debts are forgiven, right? Like that's how I've kind of always thought about the year of Jubilee. Like just like clean slate, we get to start over, and it is a clean slate, but it's not just like your debts are paid off. It's a celebration that you have earned your land back. You have earned your freedom back, but it's not a sense of just paying off debts. You kind of are being reset. Second, there would be a return of ancestral possessions to those who had been compelled to sell them due to their poverty. You couldn't sell land permanently. God had this idea that the land was His, which is quite opposite of what a lot of us think today. You know, we've got the title to our land, you know, and our house sits on like less than a quarter of an acre, right? But it's our land. Well, not really. It's really all God's land. If we think about that verse out of Psalms that says the cattle on 1,000 hills belongs to the Lord. Well, the hills belong to him too. This is all his thing. He made it all, and so it all belongs to him. And it had specific rules, the year of Jubilee, about what could be sold and couldn't be sold. And so I encourage you to look up Leviticus 25 today as part of just catching up and seeing what all Leviticus had to say about the year of Jubilee. Again, the deal with receiving your land back, your family land back, it wasn't that your debt was paid off. It was that you are getting back what already belonged to your family. Levites had a special deal in that they were given land that could never be bought or sold. They weren't given, when Joshua distributed land to the 12 different tribes, they weren't given everything else that everybody else got, because their duty was going to be to eventually the temple and to the tabernacle, and their whole life was going to revolve around that. So they had special rules, like their houses, the Levites' houses couldn't be sold or things like that. They couldn't be kicked out because they owed somebody money. Which, as a pastor, I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool deal. The third feature of Jubilee was that it was to be a year of rest for the land, that the land would be left to be fallow, even though it had just been in the previous year. It was a sabbatical year, as that 50th year. It also helped the people to live very simply and humbly. And anytime God is asking us to rest, what he's really asking us to do is to trust him, to trust that he can do more in us than we can try to do on our own. It doesn't mean this is an excuse to be lazy. It doesn't mean you don't work your job. It doesn't mean even that ambition is bad. It just means you've got to know, we need to know, I need to know that God has built in this idea of rest and Sabbath for us, not only for our bodies, our minds, our souls to rest, but for us to, once again, turn our eyes back to Jesus and remember, you are the source. You are the one who makes all this possible. God, you are the one in me that can revive me, restore me, rebuild in me, re-energize me in ways that I cannot do even on my own. Now, one question I had as we finish up for tonight is, well, did the year of Jubilee actually happen? And in my research, I could not find anything that could tell me one way or another, like yes, it happened, or no, it definitely didn't happen. My guess is this could be one of those things that it was like, God, that's a great idea, but I don't want to give back stuff. But I don't know. There's no conclusive proof one way or the other. It seems like once people get their hands on things, that it's hard to let go of those things. How do I know? Well, right behind our church, just on the other side of, if you could go, 300 yards through this wall, there's iron gate or iron guard storage, and people have just closets full of stuff and garage containers just full of stuff, right? So did Jubilee ever happen? We don't know. Does it matter to my salvation today? Probably not, but the real issue with Jubilee really draws us back to the Ten Commandments, which is remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. And so really, all this was just a plug to say, are you taking time to give God his day? That's something that God's convicting me about lately. I know on my Sabbath, if I'm honest, it really just has to be with just me resting, which isn't bad. God calls us to that rest. But it can be bad when it's just like, it's got to be my plans or else, right? And so that's what God's working on me and trying to teach me over and over again, it seems like. So anyways, year of Jubilee, did it happen? Not sure. Does God call us to the Sabbath? Yes, absolutely. And I hope that you're giving yourself the permission to obey God and take your Sabbath rest. Hey, I can't wait to see you Sunday. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Give it a thumbs up, give it an angry sign if it makes you angry. I don't know, but I would love to hear your response. And even if it raises more questions, then let's keep the conversation going. See ya.